What is up, Lighthouse Middle Schoolers? How you guys doing? Hope you guys are having a great, fantastic Wednesday wherever you are. I'm glad you're there, connecting with your small group, connecting with your leaders. I think that's awesome. A couple of announcements for you guys before we get into our lesson. First off, money for Blitz is due tonight. What is Blitz? It is our all-nighter happening Friday, November 3rd into Saturday, November 4th. It's super awesome. We go to Valley Church, we have a worship service, and then all night long we're bussed around to some super awesome venues like Sky Zone and bowling and an arcade and rollerblading and ice skating and the Valley Community Center. You're not going to want to miss it. So cost is $75. If you didn't give your money to your leader tonight, either text your parents now, tell them to bring money when they come pick you up, or have them reach out to me because I need to register tomorrow because spots fill up really, really quick, and we want to make sure that we've got everyone who wants to come that they can get their spot. So $75. If you haven't brought your money, pull your phone out of your pocket and text your leaders or text your parents to bring the money for that. And then we have our Bigger, Better, Best challenge. So this is an opportunity for you to connect with your leaders and your small group, okay? So you'll start with a quarter, and you will go around a neighborhood, and you will try and trade that up into the bigger and the better and the bestest thing. And then you'll bring it to youth group on October 4th. You guys will get to share with all the other groups what your group was able to trade up for, and then we will pick a winner for whoever brings the biggerest, betterest, and bestest thing to October 4th youth group. So this is an opportunity for you and your group to connect, spend time together, hopefully have a lot of fun. So yeah, your leader will be reaching out to you and your parents to coordinate when you guys are going to go out. And that'll happen kind of outside of regular youth group time. And then this QR code, it will be in the corner of the PowerPoint for the rest of the lesson. But on October 4th, when we meet all together, I'd love to answer your questions about friendships. So we're talking about friendships in youth group all month long. And I'd love to be able to speak maybe practically to some things that you are dealing with or trying to think about, or ways that you want to follow Jesus, but you're not really sure how. I'd love to do my best to open up the Bible with you guys and talk through those questions. So this will be throughout the lesson. If you have a question as I'm talking, feel free to pull that up and scan it, submit your questions. Because if you don't have questions, I'm just going to have to make some stuff up. So go ahead and fill that out. It's anonymous, so if you want to put your name, you can. If you don't want to put your name, that's fine too. It doesn't make any difference to me. But yeah, I'd love to be able to answer your questions, open up the Bible together about friendships. So one last final thing. I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but hopefully your leaders gave you this. This is just like a little tool as I'm talking through the lessons each week for you to take some notes, just jot some thoughts down. Hopefully that will help you guys to have better discussions, better small group discussions after I finish our lessons. So with that out of the way, let's hop into our lesson for tonight. So, like I said, I'm glad that you're here today because throughout this series, we are going places when it comes to our friendships. As on any trip, there are going to be bumps along the road, just like in real friendships. This week, we are exploring what to do during those ups and downs we experience in our friendships. And friends know how to push each other for better or for worse. Good friends know that striving toward better sometimes includes tough or maybe uncomfortable conversations. Last week, we started talking about going places in our friendships, and that sounds fun in theory, but frequently when we are on our way to good friendships, we get stuck in an in-between place either because of conflict or distance or miscommunication. And friendships seem simple when things are fun, but it's not always fun when a friend challenges us on something that we don't really want to hear. The best kinds of friends help each other to be the best versions of themselves as they journey together. This reminds me of a conversation that I had with my youth pastor when I was in high school. Him and I would get together every once in a while, and I remember him sharing with me something that he had noticed about me, which was that I have a really hard time, or at that point, had a really hard time dealing with when things changed, that I really struggled with that. And that was kind of a hard thing to hear from someone, but it was really, really helpful for him to share that with me and kind of challenge me and say, hey, when you are experiencing changes in your life, you don't handle that very well. You need to learn how to take that to God, how to have faith and be confident in who God is and where he's leading you. So that was really helpful that he kind of challenged me on that thing that he saw in me that I had not yet seen in myself. And so last week we looked at the moment when Jesus fed over 5,000 people, which was pretty wild, right? And in that miracle, Jesus is showing his great power, how he is Lord, how he is the bread of life, and he supplies all that we need. But also through this story, he showed us that friends, they don't miss an opportunity to care for one another, because he had compassion and care for that large group of people, and that is part of why he helped to feed them. And after finished feeding the crowd, Jesus sent his friends ahead of him so that he could spend some time alone with God. And then this happened, okay? So we're in Matthew chapter 14. This is on page 607 if you're using this Bible. Let's read it together. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. After sending them home, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" Seems pretty reasonable, right? But Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage, for I am here." And Peter called to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water." "Yes, come," Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him and said, "You have so little faith," he said. "Why do you doubt me?" When they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped, and the disciples worshipped him. "You really are the Son of God," they exclaimed. So, there's a lot happening there. Lots to wrap our minds around. And Jesus' friends, right, at this moment, they are in trouble, right? And then suddenly they see Jesus walking on the water. They thought he was a ghost, which honestly, if I saw someone walking on the water, might be my first thought too. And in the middle of all of that wildness, Jesus does something even stranger. He accepts this challenge from Peter. In order to prove it was really Jesus standing before them, Peter asked Jesus to allow him to walk on the water too. And the moment that Peter started to kind of flounder, Jesus then responds by challenging him with a question. It wasn't a mean or judgmental question, but an honest and pretty direct one, and it's meant to help Peter. Why do you doubt me? There was a moment when Peter had the faith to keep him above the water, but when he thought about what was really happening, he started to kind of sink. And it's easy for us to kind of give Peter a little bit of grief in this story because he's doing something really cool, he's got faith, and then all of a sudden it kind of all starts to fall apart, right? But then we can remember that honestly, Peter was really brave here. He chose to get out of the boat in the first place. But then he let his guard down and he met Jesus' challenge of friendship. And that word challenge can kind of come across a little bit aggressively, right? You might think, oh, someone wants to challenge me? Okay, I will see you after school then for a beatdown. But a challenge doesn't necessarily have to be hostile. It can be an invitation to grow. Through challenges, our friends can help us to be more like Jesus while growing closer together in our friendship. And at first, Peter challenged Jesus to prove his identity by displaying his power. Jesus took the opportunity to grow closer to Peter and then issued his own challenge for Peter to demonstrate his faith. Jesus is looking for ways for us to grow closer to him. And Jesus knew that Peter could walk on the water with his help, right? But did Peter know that? Even if he didn't before, he definitely did after what happened. And these challenges are built from a level of trust in their friendship. They'd spent years being open and honest with each other, right? Many days and trips together created small moments and opportunities for Jesus and Peter to trust one another. The moment Peter stepped out of the boat, their friendship continued to grow and to deepen. And Jesus didn't, of course, let Peter do this alone. He helped Peter to meet that challenge. When we start to trust each other, we can be open to our friends calling us into hard and maybe scary things, especially when it comes to our relationship with Jesus. Peter followed and trusted his friendship with Jesus and ended up walking on water, an impossible achievement. And when we accept a challenge from Jesus, we can open ourselves up to a new and incredible life, all the amazing things that God has for us. So, the book of Hebrews. It's a letter written to a group of new Christians who are being punished for their faith. This happened a lot in the New Testament. And some were even being sent to prison. And this suffering was making some followers walk away from Jesus and maybe even abandon their faith. And like Peter, these followers of Jesus, they're kind of in a storm, right? Their doubts and their fears were making them sink beneath the waves. And the author of the letter to this group of Christians inspired them to strengthen their community. And if you were at youth group back in August, I read this passage. I love this passage because it's not just talking to like me or Pastor Kevin. It's talking to all of us, right? So let's read what it says. Let us hold tightly without wavering to the hope that we affirm, for God can be trusted to keep his promise. Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. Let us not neglect our meeting together, as some people do, but encourage one another. So we have the power to point others toward Jesus. That's the kind of friend that we can be to others and the kind of friend that we need around us. When we're challenged, we need friends and can be friends who spur others on to keep going even when it's tough. So this is not a call to create obstacles in your friendships, but rather to encourage others towards love and good deeds and closeness to Jesus whenever possible. When we challenge each other for these purposes, our friendships grow stronger. And when it comes to bringing more love and goodness and kindness into the world, friends aren't afraid to challenge each other. So maybe you're hearing this talk of confrontation and you want to object. You're thinking, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I don't want to get into a fight. Or maybe there's another group of you out there and you're thinking, oh, sweet. Now I have permission to tell everyone else all the things that are wrong with them, right? Both of the responses are understandable, but they're both going to hinder an opportunity to help one another become more like Jesus. So let's look at a few ways that we can learn to challenge our friends like Jesus did and invite them to become more like him. So the first thing we want to do when we challenge our friends is to choose to care. When you challenge a friend, it needs to come from a place of genuine care for them, right? Consider if you're challenging them to just prove that you're right about something, or if you want them to just be like you, right? What can you say that will help them to know that you're hoping to encourage them to be like Jesus? What can you do to check your own motives? Next, we want to be honest. When Peter started to sink, Jesus asked him a direct question in order to be understood and to challenge him. When you challenge friends, what are some ways that you can care and have empathy for their situation while still being honest and direct? Next, we don't want to stay silent. Sometimes we feel tempted to stay silent in order to just keep the peace, not rock the boat. But if a friend isn't treating others or themselves very kindly and we don't say anything, who's going to do it? We can take our important role as friends seriously when we care for those around us. Challenge those close to you towards love and kindness, and it may cause momentary frustration or hurt or strain on your friendship, but that may be the only way that they notice the things that they're doing, right? And then finally, we want to talk with, not about. When you notice that you may need to say something in a friendship, be careful that you don't spread your concerns to others before you tell your friend. We can easily be too worried to have a face-to-face conversation, and we end up sharing our feelings with others instead, which leads to gossip. And God has a lot to say about how we are not to gossip. So make a plan to kindly and directly talk with your friend about your concerns, and find ways to make sure that you are avoiding talking about them behind their back. People who follow Jesus are encouraged to encourage others in love and kindness. And we need to demonstrate this lifestyle before we expect those around us to accept those challenges. Remember to take these steps to heart before asking them of someone else. Are you caring for others? Are you being honest? Are you willing to talk with others and not gossip about them? As you challenge your friends, we have to maintain compassion and empathy for yourself and for them. And challenging someone isn't always about correcting or perfecting. Sometimes challenging means showing your friend how you see them and who they were made to be. In the same way, when we encourage others to their best, we can reflect and see if we are also living out the best for ourselves. When we are in trustworthy and growing relationships, we can see that friends aren't afraid to challenge one another. All right, that's what I've got for you guys this evening. We're going to switch it over to small groups. I love you guys. I'll see you when I see ya.